Are you good?
We're good.
Okay, so I have a fancy title because my board wanted fancy titles. Okay, it's an impact analysis that students use of teacher feedback as a means to choose and reflect on mathematical learning goals. And my question that drove that title is, how does teacher feedback help students choose and reflect on a math learning goal? And I wanted to do this because I wanted students to be kind of engaged in a learning process and develop control over their own learning, because I think that kids need to be able to understand themselves as a learner. So I figured that kids, if they can goal set in literacy for themselves, when kids are reading, they can say, well, I need to be able to make connections better. I want them to be able to do that in a math context as well. So I have a grade 3 classroom in a small rural school. It's a J3 to 6 school. I have 20 students, but one moved away. It didn't seem to impact the study too much. And I have no ESL students, and I do have quite a few behavior students, even though they're not formally identified. I just want to touch on my research for a minute, because my question was bigger than what I really thought it was, because it seems to cover 4 domains. So I had a huge amount of research in front of me, which I had no clue about. I had to research feedback, which really hit the assessment realm. I had to research reflection, which really was metacognition. I had to research it in a math context. I had to research goal setting, which ended up being self-regulation. So there were 4 areas that really required lots and lots of research. I'll just touch on regulation for a minute, because growing success talks about self-regulation, and it includes goal setting, assessing and meeting one's needs, and choosing strategies to achieve goals. When kids control their own learning and are problem solving for themselves, that's part of self-regulation. And when students receive good feedback, they can become masters of their own learning. When self-regulation is increased, that also increases motivation. And feedback can help students set their own goals. Shank is the leading researcher in self-regulation, and I thought that I really got a lot of really good information from him. And Susan Burkhart was a really good resource for me in how to give students effective feedback, so that was really helpful for me too. Both those researchers, along with LNS, said that it wanted to encourage teachers to use models and visuals when to provide feedback. Here's my visual model, and that would mean that you could use that in the form of an anchor chart, and to have those posted in the room so that when students need to choose a goal, they can use that chart to choose a goal from. So in my methodology, I started out with having the students complete a questionnaire on my website. It was all done anonymously. Then I introduced my math lesson. I gave them the purpose. Then the students completed it on a template that I had developed myself. And shockingly, I discovered that the students had no idea on what a math learning goal might be. They just gave a learning goal in general, such as finish my work harder, listen better. Now, this was with no prior teaching at all. So then what I started to do is we generated or co-constructed an anchor chart together as we were going more into our inquiry into problem-solving core area. And we developed this anchor chart and asked students, well, what did you do to problem-solve your area problem? Then my feedback turned into, well, let's use the anchor chart to help you choose a goal from. Then I could see a change in almost everyone in the classroom, because then you could see count squares, count columns or something. So that was my huge aha moment in my research. So my findings were that the learning goals changed, and these are really called process goals. So the strategies that we see on anchor charts in a math context are really called process goals. When teachers encourage process goals, achievement is increased. The other kinds of goals are called performance goals, and research shows that process goals yields higher results. And if you give progress feedback on process goals, higher learning results. what I really thought was cool was that this is like self-selected feedback for the students. Is they can choose for themselves which goal they needed, and therefore the kids were more motivated to learn, and they really liked using this. And my final piece of methodology was interviews at the end. And when I interviewed the students, they said they liked the anchor chart helped them the most. It's learning for me.
That's exciting. That's it's that. This to me sounds like an example of praxis when practice and research come together. So the research tells you that they're working on process goals, that their skills and abilities will grow more, and that's what you found. So you tried that, and that's what you found. So they come together so strongly in your project.
Yeah, it was like, I read it in the research while I was doing it, so yeah, what I'm doing really is happening and is coming through or whatever.
I'm curious, where do you remember who did the writing about that, where you got that research from, about the process?
It might be referred to in here with brackets beside it.
Okay. Oh, so I'll see that later when I see your paper. Excited? No, I don't. I'm just saying it.
It might be if I put the process
I'll get
in
it.
here.
I'll get it later. I'm just curious for myself because I'm really interested in using anchor charts. So
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, I'm.
I never heard of those two things either. It does make sense though, process goals and performance goals.
Okay. Yeah, it might be Kitsantis, or it might be even LNS. I've got Shonkin Stevens, so I'll have to look.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll look and see.
And in various areas, you have strengths and
I'll have to look and see which one.
maybe actual initiative.
No, but that was really interesting. I had no idea there was a specific label for goal setting, process goals, performance goals. So that was really interesting, all about goals.
Especially with our whole, I know at our board, our whole, whatever my word I'm trying to think of right now. Our whole goal this year is to feedback and giving kids feedback and not the marks, and why that's important to reflect on the feedback. So it's to be able to tell students that it's broken down, like you need to know the steps to be able to perform better, and the more steps you know and the better you understand your needs, you can perform better. Same in anything, right? Any subject area. So
in Susan Burkhardt's book, she actually scaffolds the feedback, so you can see the different levels of feedback depending on what that student needs. So that was kind of cool too. So I actually think I want to purchase her book because it was such a wealth of information.
And so did you look into that in your project at all, the different levels of feedback? Or were you focusing on using the anchor charts to help them select their feedback?
I ended up focusing more on here because I put that as a problem that I had, because the feedback seemed to take second fiddle, because there was no way I could give the feedback, control oral feedback and write the feedback and teach all at the same time.
I think this is more important because when it comes from the students, it's stronger than, I think it's stronger than anything you can do.
The feedback was secondary. It didn't really matter. And also I noticed the whole, once again it proved the point, whole class setting, it didn't matter. Nobody said that they got their ideas from the whole class reflection piece afterwards. Everything happened here.
yes, definitely.
Whole class, you know how you sit and teach with your whole class? That's not where the learning is happening. That's why it always has to be kept short. You know, for shared reading, keep it short. Everything in that setting has to be kept short, because I think 2 of my students said, I got my goal from listening to you on the carpet.
But small groups and partner work, and that's where they're getting all their
I need to, and they are 2 of my most self-regulated students.
Right.
That said
makes sense. Especially at the younger age, even at the older kids though, they group work, small group work is where it's at. Totally.
Yeah, that's right. So it just proved itself again. I said, there we go again. My whole class learning was not where it was at. It was that mattered the most.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was in a math context. Something different because it was in a math context, the goal setting. And that's exactly what I set out to do, and took it out of the literacy context and put it in the math context.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.